Good evening. Welcome to episode 117 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast, recording on May the 16th, 2021. My name is Eric. I'm the host of the show, based in Southern Ontario. I'm a hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, and computer geek. As a first responder, I witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events, such as WASP attacks, and started a small preparedness company to help people get better prepared for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
My name is Ian. I live on Vancouver Island, and it's surprisingly wasp-free. I'm a student preparedness, target shooter, and my farm's designated mediocre handyman.
I'm Scott. I'm a frazzled new dad and do some EMS stuff. I split my time between Southern and Northern Ontario, and I don't believe that things will always be just as they've been just because I want them to be.
I'm Jeff. I'm based in Central Ontario. I'm a target shooter, soon-to-be ham radio operator, and general handyman.
Want to support the show and keep the Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air? Buy some swag. We have both the Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt and the tactical Velcro patch at www.prepperpodcast.ca. All proceeds help keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled.
And if you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and like us on Facebook and submit a review on iTunes. We also want your feedback, good, bad, or stinging, or just the topic you want us to cover. You can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
So those of you who are wondering what all the WASP references are to, I've got about 6 or 7 of them since I've walked into the office here. I don't know where they're coming from, but I suspect Ian sent them. So,
just part of the extra entertainment. So
there was some choice words. I'm probably going to have to hit the explicit button for this episode. And if my camera shuts off all of a sudden and you hear a bunch of cursing and swearing, well, you know what's happened. I've been attacked. And Ian's hit the big red attack button on his end. But anyways, we've got some shaking content for you in this episode, not stinging. We're going to start off with some preparedness-related news articles. Next, we'll let you know what we've done for our preparedness since the last episode. Then we'll get into the main topic, earthquakes and their effects. So let's move into the news.
all right. So unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure everybody's heard about the Colonial Pipeline shutdown. I had an article from BNN Bloomberg. Basically said pipeline hacking will take days to fix. Well, as it turned out, it took more than a few days. As a matter of fact, it is supposedly back online, yet they have another article that popped in and said it's going to be at least 3 or 4 weeks before some gas stations get their gas back. So 3 to 4 week shutdown, that's no laughing matter, right?
No, it's not.
No. Global News, of course, was late to the party. I think it was about a week after the pipeline shutdown that they decided to finally mention it. So I threw in a Canadian article on that one, which made me kind of giggle. I was like, wow, guys, you guys are right on top of things.
Little busy with COVID, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a pseudo distraction as well. But I didn't think it was. I thought it was going to be a bigger deal than it was, but it actually turned out to be almost a nothing burger. But another pipeline in Israel got hit with from Hamas there during their little spat in the Gaza Strip right now. So it seemed to be odd that a second pipeline in as many weeks had been taken out. But it's the one that basically supplies Israel with most of their gas. Because if you look at the shape of Israel, it's like a triangle at the bottom, and right at the very bottom is their one little port to the Red Sea. And they have a pipeline that runs from there, obviously, to the main population center, which is up towards Turkey. And of course, that's the pipeline got taken out. So
Of course.
I was like, oh, that's bad for them. But I mean, by the same token, though, hey, all's fair in love and war, right? So they're doing their thing. Anyways, and then finally, the third article I had, which I thought was more humorous than anything, I found it extremely sad that the finance people from Yahoo decided to put out an article that said, just so you know, the government's put out a warning that you should not fill shopping bags with fuel or
Hold on.
laundry baskets.
Why?
Was a good one.
What?
Shut
Why
the
not?
front door. We shouldn't be doing
What
that.
could go wrong with that?
Brand new information.
Yes. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Is it because of carbon monoxide? What's the...
Well, there's a carbon monoxide danger after it explodes in your trunk, I suppose, and catches your car on fire.
Well, didn't that happen to that woman in South Carolina?
Oh, God. And it's funny thing is they showed one article at first, and I was like, oh, that's an old picture. I saw that years ago. And all of a sudden they came up with like 50 new pictures of people doing this. And it's like clear shopping bags, laundry baskets. I'm not kidding. They filled the bottom
Laundry
inch
baskets,
with fuel. I couldn't believe it. And I saw like, cut in half ice cream pails. I've seen all sorts of stupid things. Like, what are you thinking? But I guess when people are panicked and stressed and whatever, I guess they don't think, right? And if they're not used to having to carry extra gas around. But there was the toilet paper people were out and about because the same people that get like 15 cases of toilet paper during a crunch. They saw one person that decided to fill their 25 jerry cans during the gas crunch, not beforehand. So anyway,
Doesn't the gas station sell like jerry cans?
I bought one. It was cheaper than Canadian Tire.
Wow.
Yeah, usually they're just the 1 gallons though, because usually they sell you the little 1 gallon so you can get back to your car because you've run out of gas and then make it to the gas station.
It'll fit more than your laundry hamper will.
Generally, yes. But I don't know. Maybe they like the fumes. Maybe they're hoppers on the side. I don't know.
That is an option. Yep.
Yeah. It's like makes your driving adventure more fun, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I just shake my head. Like, I mean, this is not the first time. Like, I mean, it's been happening since the days of Jimmy Carter that they've had gas shortages down there, and yet people still haven't figured out how to transport gas safely, I guess. But the fact the government put out a warning for it made me giggle.
That is good.
Yikes.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all I have.
So my news article is springboarding off the Colonial Pipeline incident, and apparently they paid a $5 million ransom to the dark side, supposed Russian hackers that started all of this mess. So we can have a whole.
Shockingly low.
Yeah, that's right. I was saying, like, Alan and I think myself and a couple other guys were discussing this. It's like they could have gotten a lot. It's like almost like Dr. Evil level of like underestimating
$1 million.
Yeah, everybody's laughing. He's like, "What? That's it? Okay, here." Like they're not even going to pursue them for $5 million, which I kind of get. But by the same token, they could have got away with a lot more. And supposedly, the dark side group has dismantled and disappeared out into the ether, which makes you think it might have not just been a group of random hackers. But anyway, I don't know. What do I know? So,
As the kids would say these days, that's rather sus.
yeah.
Sure. You could maybe finish the sentence, but whatever.
No. Syllables are hard.
That's not how kids talk.
Okay. Steven's got a good point here in the live chat when we were talking about the jerry cans being sold at the gas stations. Yeah, you're right. They probably ran out of supply. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure every gas station probably only has 1 or 2 for sale at any given time. If they sell it, they order it and a new one shows up next week. But I mean, the simple fact is that if after the last year between pandemics and economic shenanigans and everything else, if you haven't become a prepper on a small scale, at least by this point, we can't help you.
You're doing it wrong.
You're beyond saving.
Yeah.
When COVID was going on, one of the things that scared my wife the most was like, look at the price of gasoline, where the price of gas had dropped by half. I'm like, this is real.
Yep.
That first couple of weeks when everyone was just locked in their houses, like, that was the barometer that this is happening.
Well, when they're for a while there, they had places that were paying people to store their gas for them on ships. So because all the tanks were full everywhere, right? So the price went negative briefly on the stock market.
Yep.
I really miss the days of 78 cent a liter gas. I really do.
You guys are almost to our level, aren't you?
It was $1.27 in town the other day. Yeah.
It's BC prices where I am at about $1.36.
Yeah, it's about $1.40, I think, right now here. So, but you're getting there. Rookie numbers, you'll work on it.
Don't worry, we're working on it. We'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Something to aspire to.
That's right.
So I've got a news article here. It's in regards to earthquakes and warning systems and how Canada sucks about it. So yeah, apparently we're cheap. There's a warning system now in place for Western U.S. on the West Coast, and not for us.
Yeah, I guess it's tied into people's cell phones, tied into people's ham radios, everything. And they've set up a system where basically you can subscribe to whatever you want, and they'll tell you as soon as they know something's coming, you'll get basically a first mover advantage on that one, and which might only be 10 seconds, but at least it's something, right?
Yeah, nothing.
But they, for some reason, for the sake of just a few pieces of software, maybe a few pieces of hardware, and I don't know, a mass emailer, I guess we can't do that. So I don't know.
We'll just blame COVID, I suppose.
Yeah, awfully cheap on our part. But anyway.
Jeff, you got a news article?
Well, you've got the one there at just about. I've got a couple, but there's the one there about Line 5, Enbridge's Line 5 pipeline never did get shut down. It is still going, and they are defying, I guess, Michigan's threat. But the governor did say that she is going to court to, quote, lay claim on its contents. Basically meaning she's put Enbridge on notice that she'll be seeking its profits if they continue to operate the line. So the shit show's still going on, and we'll see what comes out of that. But outside of that, it's kind of really been sort of radio silence on the whole thing. At Wednesday come and gone, there was that one release, and there's really been nothing else.
Well, it's kind of funny because they had a court order to stop the pipeline. The pipeline owner just gave the middle finger and said, we'll pass. We'll just keep operating. And then, of course, she's desperate for revenue because of the whole economic shutdown business in Michigan. So now she's trying to get the profits from it just for free money. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes as far as like a standoff. But I don't know.
Well, it was also interesting when you look at all of the different affected areas. I think Ohio was going to have more job losses than anywhere else because of this, and so there's so many different stakeholders that have reason to want the pipeline to carry on.
Yeah, there were a couple of states. You're right. Ohio was one. I think Indiana was one of them too. That publicly come out and said, "You do that, and you're screwing us worse than them." So, but we'll see. Yeah. And the other article that I have, don't shoot me, it's from the Toronto Sun. I know. You don't have to say enough.
Here we go.
But it's basically, continuing on what we've talked about the last couple of weeks. It's Warren Kinsella basically putting out a bit of an op-ed or whatever, however he words it. And basically says in every way, Bill C-10 is wildly unconstitutional. Thank you, Captain Obvious.
I was going to say, another news, water is wet.
So
wait a minute. Water's wet. Holy.
So the real question is, even if it is completely unconstitutional in every way, shape, or form, since when has that ever stopped this particular government from doing something?
Well, that was going to be my comment. I think it's going to happen. Quebec wants it really bad, just so that they can put a little bit more of a clamp down and have their French content. So with the Liberals and the Bloc on side, I think they'll get it through. They just gotta word it a little bit better so that you don't think you're being censored when you really are. They just got to figure out a way to word it so that it doesn't sound like you're being censored when you are.
Sounds like the government.
Yeah. Yep. It's actually kind of funny because Warren Kinsella used to be like the biggest apologist for the Liberal Party, like all the way through the 90s, early 2000s, everything else. And all of a sudden now he's turned right around and he's like, yeah, he's actually calling a spade, which is nice to see. There've been a couple good articles out of him lately.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
He saw the light. At least I hope he did.
Maybe. Or a broken clock thing, Yeah,
could be. Shall we move into what we've done lately for preps?
Go for it.
All right. So for myself, did some truck maintenance. So new spark plugs and wires are in. Thanks to Jeff for the loaning of a little extension for my sockets. Without that, I would still be out tinkering with the truck. Getting ready for the fishing trip. So we do a couple of fishing trips out in the backcountry in the summer, and the first one's coming up in a couple of weeks. So got the boat out of storage, got it all ready to roll, checking out all the gear, making sure everything's good to go, and we should be good to disconnect and get out in the middle of nowhere if the government opens up Crown land in the next couple of weeks. And if they don't, well, we'll come up with another plan.
Do they actually have do they have a restriction on Crown land access right now?
They do right now. Camping overnight stays on Crown land are banned right now.
Oh.
In Ontario, yeah. They didn't publicly announce that, but if you look in the regulations, it's in there.
Oh.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
What's your fish of choice? Like, what are you guys after? Just like a walleye or?
So it's usually beer battered.
The best kind, yeah.
Yep.
It's a drinking trip where some worms die.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say too much because according to a bunch of people I tell, we go fishing. So it's going to be fishing.
Yeah.
There is bass in there. There's some perch. So I've been told. We catch the odd one here or there.
It's the name of the place is it's actually Pickerel Lake, and nobody has ever seen a pickerel in it. So
nope.
Go figure, eh?
Nope. But so that's what I did this week. And
all right. Okay, so I can't remember. Like last week, did we talk about my engaging with the child labor?
I don't think so.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah. I couldn't remember if we had talked about stopping by the range for the brass strip.
Oh,
but anyways.
Yep.
Okay, we did. So yeah, so I put my daughter to work on that, and been fantastic. Actually, I'm currently cleaning some brass right now. Still, I think we got the count right now is about 7,000. So that's pretty
Nice.
cool. Yeah, hopefully it all sells. Anyway, we'll see. Okay, so first off, I guess I've been sitting in the alternate location there for most of the week, so I haven't really been able to get a whole lot done. But I did sit down and kind of plunk down on the videos for the advanced ham course, and I got to tell you, like the first test, I was like, I made it through because only like an eighth of it was electronics, and I thought, oh yeah, no problem, I can power through that, and then we can talk about antennas, and frequencies, and regulations, and all this other stuff. I was like, nah, it should be more of the same with the advanced. No, it's all electronics.
Yep,
So
it sure is.
I'm like, and I'm still trying to figure out if he's talking Greek, but anyway,
He might be at times.
yeah. So I'm having a real tough time with it. So I was debating bailing it, but I was like, what would Jocko do? I'm like, no, we don't quit. So
Power through.
yeah,
Get
we have
after it.
power through, yeah, all that stuff. So I'm gonna have to sit down and make a concerted effort, but it's very easy to not want to study it right now, which is a problem. So
If I can do it, you can do it.
yeah, I
That's
just
the plan.
it's a motivation thing. So I need some gentle mocking on that at some point then. So I'm sure you guys will oblige. But anyway, so other than that, I was able to just kind of sit there and play with the chirp program a little more, getting some repeaters that are further out into the Lower Fraser Valley there, kind of programmed in that aren't really listed that well. And talked to Alan quickly, but we couldn't make your cable work there, which is kind of weird.
No, it's a driver issue, and it's a computer problem, not a radio problem. And Eric and I were going to link up on that, and I've been absolutely swamped the last 2 weeks, so I'm trying to fit it in, but it's a low priority.
Yeah, and I sat there and learned about some lightning protection and grounding for the ham radio setup, because going to have like a kind of a common ground setup in the shop here, so I was kind of figuring out how to do that. Joined a couple nets that were sitting there going on as best I could, because why not? I'm just sitting there, right? Yep. Other than that, I received a package from Rapid Survival.
Look at that.
Yay! Then I pretended. Yeah, so I got back here, finished unloading the truck from a little trip over there, and of course did some shopping for stuff in bulk over there. Then when I got back, I had to pretend to be a globalist and quickly do some population control on the chickens, and take care of some excess roosters that got taken care of today. And then other than that, I just kind of settling down after being gone for a week. So not much else for me.
Nice.
I have a very generous wife and got a chainsaw. So I had some wood that needed attention on our property, and since firewood's kind of part of the long-term what-if plan, it's a pretty good investment. Had to move about 40 tons of crushed rock to deal with the culvert.
Wow.
Rented a Bobcat, but ended up moving far too much of it by hand. And then the friends who helped my wife pick out the chainsaw suggested I get a lot of safety gear because they know me well.
I would recommend that as well. And it definitely, I don't know how many times I've been clunked on the head with a wayward branch, and the helmet has saved me from losing what precious few brain cells I have left. So definitely the helmet with the ear protection and face kind of mask built in, but also the safety chaps. Like there's a lot to be said about those, because it's not so much when you first start chainsawing for the day, it's when you're like tired after 4 hours of it, and all of a sudden that blade just goes to swinging wildly and like just glances against whatever. It's just nice to know that's there, because even if it just saves you from a minor boo-boo, it's worth it. But let alone the stuff that can kind of gunk up the chain.
Yeah, like my internal organs.
Yeah, no, actually, like, it's kind of funny. Like, I'm not kidding. So back when I was up in the northern Saskatchewan, there's this one, like the village idiot. Anyway, he was put on chainsaw duty, and twice, he's sitting there chainsawing a log straight down towards his leg, and literally the safety chap material was getting flung out the back of the chain. And we're all like, stop. He's like, what? He's pushing down towards his leg, and I was like, oh my God.
Jeez.
And it's like, if it wasn't for the fact that those safety chaps gummed up his chain, he would have been a dead man twice. And so they're worth their weight in gold. I mean, they do save a lot of injuries. So
don't forget the safety sandals as well. Very important.
Steel-toed boots are important.
Admittedly, going back to the whole CTOMS episode, I did have my cat tourniquet in my back pocket.
That's a very good idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't feel right using a chainsaw without a beer and a smoke.
True. That is also important safety equipment.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Sarcasm for people that don't get it.
Yeah. Oh, Brad's asking, what kind of saw did you get?
Still 16-inch 42cc. Arborist friend of mine recommended the still is a great brand, and sort of a couple of knowledgeable friends said, looking at your property, that should handle sort of any of the trees that you have to deal with. So I'm pleased.
Right on.
Yeah, I've got a still, and I won't go to anything else. I had a different brand before, and it ended up blowing up, but my still's been going for 4 years strong now. Never had a problem with it.
One of my good buddies, has one that he got in high school, and it's been serving him for 25 years and still going strong. So I take that as a good sign.
Yeah. Now just spare parts and like owner's manual and spare chains, everything else. Make sure you got them all.
Absolutely. I still need the spark plugs and the safety chaps. But my again, the generous wife did the case and the extra oil and the 50-to-1 oil, and so
nice.
we're pretty well set up. Spare
Right
chain.
on.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, I had for the second week in a row, so I got to get my act together. I had a bit of a not so productive week. I just did a whole bunch of yard cleanup. Did help Eric there a little bit. Made sure that the beer fridge was cold, and
Beer fridge is empty now.
Not my fault. I'm not going to admit it.
Sure.
And I have done some studying for the ham test, so I'm probably going to take a shot at it sometime within the next couple of weeks.
Nice.
Awesome. So hold you to that, Jeff.
Okay.
The trick isn't how much you do. The trick is how you articulate it, like Ian. You could take up a full. You could have taken up a full page if you'd done that yard work and just stretched it out over the individual tasks. It would sound like a whole lot more.
See, he's on to me.
Eaves troughs and gutters and downspouts.
That is correct. Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
That is. Well, then in that case, I guess I was the busiest of all.
And raking and mowing and
Nope.
yeah. Oh well.
I've been mostly focusing on my garage. So the demolition is slated for the 31st, and it still has all my cool stuff in it, which I'm really desperately trying to change so that when the excavator comes, it doesn't take all my cool stuff with it. Did, however, this evening attend.
Is that me or is that Al?
No,
Oh.
he stopped for me too.
I've
right.
been working a lot, so trying to get my radio set up. At some point, I'll link
Doesn't
up with
miss a
Eric,
beat.
and we'll be able to figure out the problems that I'm having. Which I know it's an operator to apparatus interface error, and I just need a little bit more training to make it work.
All right, I'm just going to fill in while Alan's pigeons took a break there. So you attended the beginning of the Adventure Smart presentation training thing?
His
he back?
pigeons have walked again.
Oh, so Alan's training to be an Adventure Smart trainer, and Adventure Smart is basically, I guess, hiking and biking and going outdoors responsibly, including like filing like trip plans and stuff. And yeah, he's busy doing training for that.
Yep.
All right,
Cool.
moving on.
While he gets his pigeons sorted out, let's move into the main topic, shall we?
All right, so why are we talking about this? I know not everybody lives in the earthquake zone, but again, as we've discovered, you may indeed travel to one. So yeah, this can apply to pretty much everybody in Canada, despite what people may think. So it's just good information to have, something to think about for sure. And yeah, so let's get into it. I guess first things first, we've all heard about the Richter Scale. Who knows what it means for reals?
The level of shaking you're going to experience.
Yeah, the scariness level. Yeah.
Yep. The
It
pucker factor.
Yeah, it is not logarithmic, like, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thing. It's more of an exponential thing. So when they talk about like each step in the Richter scale, like from a scale of basically 1 to 9 plus, each step is 10 times more powerful as far as what they call amplitude, which means how much ground shaking goes on, which is fine. But the problem is every step releases 32 times more energy than the previous step. So for example, like I do believe a 1 on the Richter scale is a hand grenade. And then moving up the scale, like if you can go 4.5 on the Richter scale, it can be measured anywhere in the world. But for example, number 2 is just a World War II size bomb. And then all the way up to number 5 is a Nagasaki size bomb, so a city shaker. And then after that, it just starts going uphill real fast. And then when you get to 9 on the Richter scale, it's like absolute destruction. So they're assuming pretty much every building's either going to be heavily damaged or flat. And it can actually even change the landscape like California style. So anything above 7, and you start getting serious, and every decimal point after 7 basically becomes like scarily more powerful, because you're talking about like kilonewtons worth of force being, or kilotons worth of TNT, sorry. And yeah, it's insane. So basically, as soon as you start hitting the 8s and 9s, you're talking about like definitely noticeable at that point, because like there's one off Chile last 2 years ago, I think it was, and it was even though it was 100 miles offshore, like the buildings in Santiago and stuff were just heavily damaged and stuff. So pretty crazy stuff. So I guess we're anticipating a big one here, but I just want to emphasize too for people in Canada that it's not just a BC thing, as much as we like to joke about it out here. It turns out you guys have some seismic zones out east as well. I actually didn't know this until last week, but you have one in the Wolf River or Rivière du Loup area called the Charlevoix seismic zone. And you guys have had a magnitude 7 earthquake there before. And also in Western Quebec near basically, I guess, just east of North Bay, kind of that area, but on the Quebec side. And it's had a magnitude 6 before. So
I would have thought that that's just Quebec trying to separate.
Well, maybe they're just trying to pry that border with a pry bar or something. I don't know.
Gotcha, I had to get that Canadian joke in there. Sorry. It's just had to happen.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, okay, so elephant in the room is BC, right? So BC, of course, has the biggest earthquake issue. But this can apply to basically anywhere you travel. Like I've been personally sitting in Tokyo when one goes off. I've had a couple here that barely even felt. But my wife sat through the Kobe earthquake in Japan one time, and yeah, they're pretty scary when they start shaking buildings. It's pretty crazy. BC is planning to have a 9.2 on the Richter scale quake offshore, within 100 miles of the island. So that's a big one. That's gonna be like if it is anywhere closer than that to land, it could plan to flatten everything on the west side of the island for sure. The reason being is that basically, if you've all heard of the San Andreas Fault. Basically it carries on past San Francisco and goes into the ocean, and basically when it goes into the ocean, it becomes the Cascadia subduction zone. But it's the exact same fault line. There's no difference. So we're actually subject to what people would call the San Andreas Fault, and basically it does produce 3,000 earthquakes a year in BC.
Wow.
How many a year?
3,000.
Wow.
Most of them you don't feel, of course, but I mean, most of them are just like, anywhere from 2 to 3, 4 on the Richter scale. And I mean, they're usually under the ocean. So, I mean, like what's going to get damaged, right? But a couple times here, like I've actually got some cracked tiles in my bathroom from when just after we moved here, we had, I think it was a 5 point something. And basically it caused my house to shift like a 1/4 inch in one half of it. And so it just cracked a couple tiles, and that was it. And then basically, yeah, we've had a couple ones that I didn't even know as I was driving along, because it was in the truck, and of course it has good shocks.
Yeah.
and yeah, but of course the radio goes off and people start talking about it and stuff. But we did have an 8.1 here in 1949, which is the most recent one. However, the last big one we had, which they figure was over 9 on the Richter scale, was back in 1700. And it was interesting the fact that, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of people here at the time in 1700, but lots of native folklore talks about it. And they did get a lot of villages taken out, because they actually talk about which villages did and didn't survive. And basically the villages that were about 75 to 80 feet above sea level were the ones that survived. Anybody below that got taken out. And Japan records it the exact day, which I think was July 2nd or something like that. And it was special for them because they got a big ass tsunami hitting Japan, but they had no associated quake there. So just out of the blue, like, tsunami style down in Indonesia back in 2000 and was it 3? I think it was.
Around that, yeah.
Yeah, they had that big one hit, and same idea with Japan, but they had absolutely no idea it was coming because they had no quake. And so it was obviously like a 12-hour later after the one here hit the coast of Japan and took out a bunch of people there. So pretty big deal. So the Cascadia earthquake is a big thing, and there's some like washout water lines in Alaska you can see where basically the tsunami had come along and wiped out everything clean below that. And so yeah, it's a big thing. So yeah, I talked about what else I've been through, but yeah, not much for me. Have you guys been through any earthquakes overseas or anything?
I thankfully have not. But looking at what you're talking about here, and the last big one being like 1,700 out your way, we're due.
Yeah, they figure it actually is. It's they said every 200 to 300 years, so we're already past 300. So like,
yep.
kind of do.
It's coming. Yep.
Yeah, so we can talk a little bit more about that for sure later on. But
Yeah.
I guess first off, earthquake preparedness. So I went to the BC government website just to see what they had to say about it, which was actually kind of more entertaining than anything else. But the best
Did they start
advice,
out with toilet paper?
they did not.
Okay,
But
good.
what they did do is they actually like totally ripped off a 1950s atomic bomb preparedness video. Instead of duck and cover, they came up with drop, cover, and hold on.
Drop, cover, and hold on.
Oh, that's gonna do well. Yeah, it sounds so horrible. They're like, get down on all fours,
geez.
try and sit under a table, and just hold on and make the bad man go away.
The comments, no, not going there. Nope.
Oh, what's wrong? You don't see anything funny?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They did bring up a good point, which I thought was good. They say don't call 911 to tell me you had an earthquake because they probably know.
I'm gonna guess that they probably have a pretty good idea. Yeah.
But the best part is, like, if they have to tell people not to fill shopping bags with gas, I'm pretty sure they probably have to tell them not to call 911 to tell them there's an earthquake happening.
I'm pretty sure they're not going to listen to either.
Yeah. So the Northridge earthquake down in California, I guess they had problems with that because when that big one hit back in, I guess it was 94, 96, instead of people actually calling to say, I've got a compound fracture or my husband's got an arterial bleed or something, those people couldn't get through because there's thousands of people calling to say, we just had an earthquake.
Yeah, did you know there's an earthquake?
So you can imagine the dispatcher frustration with that. I'm sure some people can appreciate that.
Yep. So Darren in the live chat here says that Toronto experienced a 5.1 in 2013.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
So that's not exactly a building.
That.
It's not exactly a building leveler, but still, it's going to be noticeable. And
especially when you're not used to them, right? You wouldn't feel anything under like 4.7 or something, right? But to those of us who live in the flatlands where it's not normal, that's a lot.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first time I got one in Japan, I think it was like a 5 point something. So it was like a nothing burger. But for me, I was just laying in bed and I was starting to get shook, right? And I was like, so I thought somebody was shaking me awake. And I was like, what's your problem, man? And I was like, who's in my room? Oh, never mind. Yeah. So it was, I was like, oh, I guess that was an earthquake. And everybody else is just kind of milling around, nothing big. But yeah.
It was the zombie apocalypse and you just didn't know it.
Yeah. Yep. I wish. I wouldn't want to be stuck in Japan for that. It'd be horrible.
No. That'd be good.
There's no double barrel shotguns or anything. All right. So they did mention on the site, be careful of aftershocks. Well, again, that shouldn't be a surprise to most people, but I guess to some people would be. I mean, you're not going to just have one earthquake. You're going to have a big one and either a bunch of small ones before or after or both.
Yep.
That's the thing.
Well, some of the aftershocks could get near to the size of the original one.
Yep. Well, yeah, and sometimes it's actually just almost like a feedback loop. It happens, and it can cause buildings that are already damaged. It can cause them to fall because now they're damaged. They have less earthquake protection built into them, so it'll take a lower shock to actually bring it down. So that is a thing.
Yeah, be careful around too.
Yeah, so actually, this while I was doing this episode up, I was sitting in Richmond, of course, and Richmond is ground zero for soil liquefaction, which is a huge issue for the Lower Mainland of BC. Because basically they say don't build on sand. Well, it's pretty much 2/3 of the Lower Mainland is basically one big river delta, which is sand. So soil liquefaction with an earthquake, for the listeners, I guess you guys probably know about this. So basically when the earthquake goes off, it's kind of like when you have your vibratory tumbler with your brass for the bullets and stuff. As soon as you start having a shaking force in that, what happens to the brass? It sinks right into the sand, right? And so what will happen is the stronger the quake, the more likely, no matter how good the foundation is, the building will either sink straight down or topple and then sink in, which is a problem. So what it does is it puts pressure on the groundwater that's already shallow because it's a river delta. And so now it turns that already wet sand into like liquid sand. And then the surface loses like surface tension. And that's the end of pretty much entire cities if you have like a 7 or higher right over the city.
So this is why we saw all those videos about quicksand when we were kids.
That's right.
And so we can understand how that works.
I was like, well, I'm 10 feet up. That should be good. I'm like, no, that's not good.
You're not.
So UBC actually has an article here. I put in the show notes that has the liquefaction danger zones for the Lower Mainland, and it shows basically parts that will sink into the ocean, parts that won't. And it was actually a good read. There's a little map, but there's a little art right up, and it's just very interesting. I mean, there's obviously some high ground. There's some stuff that's like more rocky than muddy. For example, the entire north shore of Vancouver is going to be fine because it's built on a mountainside. They just have to worry about landslides, I guess, afterwards.
I was going to say.
Yeah, but at least they won't sink into the sand first.
That's good. Yep. Yeah, that's a plus.
That's a plus.
This sounds more like outrunning your buddy than outrunning the bear. It doesn't really solve the problem.
But at least we're not sinking. We're just getting, covered in rock avalanches. Yeah. There's actually, like, if you look over most of the mountains in BC, you can see where they've had like landslides just due to erosion. Well, that would be the same thing if there's any loose gravel in earthquake, right? You just have it all kind of funnel down, and that'd be that. So, okay, so yeah, they actually do mention on the government website have a realistic bug out bag. And I put realistic in there for my purposes because you can't have just ammo in there.
Do they actually call it a bug out bag?
Or do they just have ammo in there?
That means I got to redo the whole thing. But they called a grab and go bag, which I thought was close to bug out bag.
Close enough for the government, I suppose. Yeah.
And they actually even go out of their way to give you a nice little contents list. So I put that in the show notes as well, because they should say, everybody should have a grab and go bag. So in case of an earthquake, you can take this bag and survive for 72 hours. I love this 72 hours thing. They're never going to, if you have a major earthquake in the lower mainland, do you think you're going to get fed by the government in 72 hours?
No.
Anyway,
took 5 days to get water to the Superdome.
Maybe 72 days.
72 days is more realistic. So yeah.
Even that, you're lucky.
And basically what it boils down to is, you're not going to have water because the water mains are probably going to get broken. You're not going to have food delivery happening, and you're not going to have any means of heating or get drying yourself off. So obviously you're going to have to take care of that yourself.
That's fine. I'll call Uber Eats. We're fine. Problem solved, right?
They'll deliver it on their Segway for you. Over the broken sidewalks and the subducted buildings.
I'm sure they have a backup plan.
Maybe they got high flotation Segways. I don't know. They just, I don't know. Anyway, what else can you do? Comms plan. So, as a reminder, text messages always get through eventually. You can send them. They might take a while, but expect phone lines to be completely jammed up. They're not going to happen. Travel plans. Roads will be impassable, whether they be covered in wet sand or broken up into pieces. You can plan to not be able to drive too far. So bike
really
routes.
Dumb drivers.
Yeah, or really dumb drivers panicking to get out of town because the earthquake happened 45 minutes ago or something. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, bike routes maybe is an alternative way of doing things, even if you have to walk out or whatever. Just get to some high ground, because in certain spots of BC, you have to worry about tsunamis. We'll talk about that in a second. And the other thing to be thinking about is that bridges may be out, and not even so much collapsed, but the engineers will get a hold of it and say, well, liability reasons alone, we can't let people cross this bridge because there may be a hairline crack we can't find.
Yep.
Bridge is closed. And places like Vancouver, and even where I am, there's probably like 9 bridges between me and Nanaimo. So yeah, that's a problem too, right? Like, I mean, all it takes is for one bridge somewhere to be closed off because lawyers getting worried, and you're done. So
I actually recall one of the first episodes that I was on, we talked about getting home, and we talked about pinch points and why you need to be aware of them and have a plan to get around them.
Yeah, I mean, it is truly a thing, especially like this one. Steve, you're asking about insurance. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's actually very fascinating. Let's see here.
Should I break out the pillow now, or?
No, it's actually.
I'm nowhere near drunk enough for something to be fascinating.
Insurance can be interesting, let me tell you. So we talk about bridges. Let's see here. We actually have a legit use for a dust mask, other than trying to prevent a microscopic viral disease. Obviously, buildings come down, roads get torn up. There's going to be dust in the air. So if you're trying to get through a building to rescue somebody, get out of a building, probably not a bad idea to have a decent dust mask on you, because who knows, if they're in a really old building, it might be asbestos dust too. That's a thing.
That is still a thing.
If there's a small fire.
I've been saying for the last year, there are a lot of good reasons to wear a mask. Virus spread is not one of them, but there are a lot of good reasons to wear a dust mask.
Yeah, exactly. And small fires in the building may lead to, come on, Alan.
Oh,
carbon monoxide.
hey.
No, not that a dust mask will prevent that, but I mean,
I was just going to say,
right? Dust mask won't do anything for carbon monoxide, but it is a danger to be, cognizant of. And same thing, fire extinguisher. Small fires can start. Maybe you just decide to have a romantic dinner with your wife. You got a couple candles going. Earthquake happens. Tablecloths on fire. Well, fire extinguisher would be great to have after you get up from your stop, drop, and roll, or whatever the hell they came up with there.
Yep.
Wait, are you on fire?
Yeah, or if I could be on fire, yeah.
Yeah.
Wife could spray me down with a fire extinguisher. That'd be great.
Yeah,
They do mention securing your water heater and large appliances. I would be more worried about bookshelves myself, but they say
Are
that
those still a thing?
Yeah, but if my bookshelf falls over, it's not going to flood all my stuff.
True. Maybe
You should not worry about your bookshelves, but you should also worry about your water heater.
Yeah, more important with them falling over, I think, is the supply lines. A lot of them are rigid supply lines. So, yeah, you could actually break the gas supply line or the water supply line or whatever. So they do say that, flexible supply lines may be a good aftermarket addition on your part, as well as like trying to put some like steel, what do you call that? That plumbers like
Strapping.
Strapping. Thank you. Something like that would be great. Put a lip on your shelves. So if you have like a bunch of canned goods on your shelves or homemade canning and preserving items, put a lip on it so they don't shake right off. If they don't topple, of course. Obviously, a high need for plastic containers versus glass because they can bounce a couple times.
Yeah,
especially if you like peanut butter and stuff, you got to make sure it's on plastic, not glass. Other than that, just put heavy stuff low on the shelves, not high up. I guess saves from some hilarity happening when it falls.
Open doors really slowly afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They remind us to know our gas, water, and electrical shutoffs. That's common sense.
That's good for anything.
That applies for a lot of stuff. But again, I think you could probably do your if you're living in an apartment building or a tight-knit community with zero lot lines, probably do your neighbors a good favor and shut off your stuff too afterwards, because who knows what's going to catch or go off or whatever, because you might not smell it in time.
Yep.
And this does seem obvious to most people, but try to put like heavy glass framed pictures above your bed if you live in an earthquake zone for reasons. I was let's get a mental picture on that. I was like,
we're not going after that one either.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. I'm saying that we should maybe just remove a few warning labels and let nature take its course. I think we would all be smarter as a result.
Yeah.
Like the average IQ would raise a little.
So that hammer collection I had on the shelf without a lip above my bed is probably a bad idea.
No, the hammers are okay. It's the throwing knives.
And my anvil collection too. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Oh, that's You should probably secure the anvils. Yeah.
Yeah.
The hammers, I'm just not touching that one either. And just no.
I was hoping for at least a Bugs Bunny joke or something, but you got to go all the way extra to that.
Go back to the hammers, and they're over your bed. And what happens in your place stays in your place.
That's right. Don't judge me.
Nope.
This is why we put you in on an island.
That's right. I actually referred to it as the prison island to my daughter the other day, and she kind of looked at me and she was like, "You're not wrong," because she got a week in the city out of it, and then she came back here, and it was like going back to Alcatraz for her. I was like, "Aw, a city girl." Anyway, okay, so insurance. Let's talk about that.
Here we go.
Nap
time.
This is kind of nap time, but it's pretty bad when the government says we will not assist you financially in case of earthquake. We have an emergency fund for like floods, fires, you name it. But the one thing we will not assist anybody for financially is earthquakes. So naturally, and I was like, wow, they put that right in black and white. I was like, that's a bad election promise. However, it's realistic. I'll give them that. By the same token, though, you could buy extra insurance around here for your house in BC. However, it basically doubles the cost of your house insurance. And there's a bunch of exclusions on it because we took a look at it as well. So here's the problem, like using 9/11 as an example. So they had a bunch of insurance providers have claims happen against them in 9/11, and they were on the hook to basically be shelling out hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars at the time. So they basically took a quick look at it and said, what's easier for us? We can either pay out all these claims and lose a shit ton of money, or just declare bankruptcy because we can't possibly pay it all this week and just not pay nobody. So they basically shut their doors, walked away with all the premiums from the previous year and didn't pay anybody anything. Now, I don't know if that's an American or a Canadian thing, like business-wise, like under certain like insurance laws or whatever. But basically, it was just easier for them to declare bankruptcy and not pay than to actually worry about paying back and recovering premiums down the road over the course of the next 20 years or whatever. Jeez. So I have a huge skepticism, believing that any insurance company that's going to charge you that much will actually pay if the entire lower mainland gets taken out with an earthquake. And they're going to have to be on the hook for like $4 or $5 million claims.
Yep.
I can't see them paying. Honestly, I think they'll just figure a way to not do it because they'll just declare force majeure or something, and they didn't see this coming, and all that other stuff. I don't think they're going to do it. So
there's probably a clause somewhere in the fine print that says earthquake coverage does not cover earthquakes.
nothing would surprise me.
It's funny you mentioned that. So here's my quick little insurance rant. So I obviously don't live in a earthquake zone. So my garage floor started cracking and heaving. So I called my insurance company and they said, "Oh, you're not covered." That's all they said. "Oh, you're not covered." I'm like, "Pardon?" "Yeah, it section whatever, subsection whatever, part C, line 14 says you're not covered by what they call, quote, earth movement." That's the only two words, earth movement, which could be anything. But they sent an inspector over and he was here less than 5 minutes. He walked in, looked at it, went, "Yep, I think that's earth movement. You're not covered by," and they left. And I'm on the hook I appealed it, and unfortunately I was unsuccessful because they said, "Well, you signed the contract that says we don't cover earth movement." So I'm on the hook for about a 15 grand garage repair whenever I can get around to it. So,
well, I mean, the whole point of insurance companies is to not pay claims, right? Or else they don't make a profit. So, yeah, if there is a way to,
but on my side of it, the whole thing is I didn't do anything wrong, and there was no negligence on my part, and I've duly paid my bills every year. And then when I do need some assistance, they go, "Bye-bye."
And not only that, but if you did make a claim and they paid it, dutifully, they just increase your premiums and then get it back off you in 5 years anyway.
And if you make 2 claims within 5 years, you're uninsurable. And don't ask me how I know that.
Yeah. So there you go.
How do you know that, Alan?
Because I made 2 claims in 5 years.
Because and insurance companies never lose, right? So honestly, there is earthquake insurance available, but in reality, if something that big happens on the West Coast, no, you're not going to get money from an insurance company that's headquartered in, I'm not going to say Toronto, but headquartered elsewhere and doesn't care, right? Like they just
Toronto. Got it.
Yeah, Toronto. I'm not saying Toronto, but I mean Toronto. Anyway,
the lesson here is it's far better to own the insurance company than to buy from the insurance company.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even if the insurance company did hand you a big suitcase full of money, you look at the price of lumber right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of demand because we're all stuck at home, and everyone's trying to rebuild their decks and fences and whatever. What do you think the price of lumber would be in the event that everyone had to rebuild a house?
Well, yeah, I mean the replacement cost
that mills all the lumber isn't producing any.
Yeah, and not only that, but replacement costs, what's in your insurance premium, probably is nowhere near, like you said, based on the current building material costs, it would never cover it. So I think in something like that, you'd pretty much be on your own no matter what. So that's it. So associated with earthquakes, actually, just a quick question. So as far as the Haiti earthquake goes there, Scott, how big was that one? Do you remember how big that was on the Richter scale?
I believe it was like a 7.0, but it was basically right close to Port-au-Prince. And I was going to talk about it in my section, but it was really interesting. The level of devastation really had a lot to do with the level of poverty and building code and building materials, looking at the difference between what the poor locals were living in versus sort of big corporate buildings that were built to kind of North American standards. And the big corporate buildings, sure, they broke some windows, but they were fine. It was all of the poor, where we would have 5 concrete columns you couldn't wrap your arms around full of rebar. They have 2 piles of cinder block. So the whole thing shifts and you get that cascading domino collapse of the entire building. And so that was the result. So it's not that it was an exceptionally strong earthquake, but it was really close to, like, the epicenter was really close to Port-au-Prince, and just the lack of building code.
Yeah, I mean, actually, right in this area where I live too, there's a place called Arrington, and up until 2 years ago, they actually didn't have a building code. So, and I've seen everything from like old logs supporting the sides of houses to everything else around here. So you can imagine what's going to happen if a good shaker happens.
They're going to stay standing, obviously. That old log is golden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tree's been here for thousands of years. It'll be fine.
Yeah. What's the problem? Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, so associated with the earthquakes around here, we always talk about the tsunamis, and a lot of guys around here joke about, it's going to come along and wash the whole island clean and everything else. And yeah, you do a little actually research about it, and there's actually some good geological maps available as far as tsunami threats, why each issue or why each area has high threats or low threats, and basically what it boils down to is if you're on the east side of the island like I am, you're fine, and on the west side of the island not so much. So like Tofino, Port Alberni, that whole thing, all the Queen Charlotte Islands, everything else. Yeah, they could get wiped clean for sure if there's sort of a major earthquake off the thing, because they've got no screening in place, right? Whereas I've got the entire island on one side of me, and I've got a bunch of small islands kind of like petering it out a bit. So there wouldn't be much more than an 8-inch wave coming our way, which is fine. And but if you want to see what the real tsunami would be like, about that 2003 Indian Ocean earthquake, they have that movie called The Impossible with Ewan McGregor. That was actually an interesting watch as far as how sudden it comes out of there. And I actually just watched a clip from it the other day, and it was like, oh, there's young Tom Holland before he became Spider-Man. So he was in the movie. And then, actually, I was sitting in Hong Kong that day when that tsunami happened. So we got the warning, but nothing came our way at all. But I guess the easy solution is if you live 100 meters up, you're not going to get hit by anything, because the highest one ever recorded so far has been 80 feet. So that's it.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah.
The ocean is currently saying, hold my beer.
Hold my beer.
What is the highest point of Vancouver Island?
About 7,000 feet. It's called It's called Mount Arrowsmith, and it's basically it's the highest point on the island. It's right behind me, and yeah, it's like there's like a major spine going down the middle of the island. So it'd have to be like a 7,000-foot wave to get over the island towards me. So if they had that one, you wouldn't have to worry about insurance claims. Look at it that way, like yep. I guess.
Then file no claims.
That's right. So yeah, a couple other sites I threw in there just before I forget. Seismic Canada, basically with the National Research Council, shows all the earthquakes that's happened in the last 30 days on any given area you want. You can get some general information off the other link I put in there. And then the BC government has basically a recovery with preparedness plan, what you need to know about hazards, and they have a tsunami info page and everything else. All going to go in the show notes for the people to take a look at on the podcast, and it'll be on the YouTube tonight as well. So yeah, some good reading if you're interested. If you live on the west side of the country, it's something to think about. And that's all I had.
Very nice.
Scott, you have anything else?
My name's in here, but I got nothing. I was just here for the color commentary.
No, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else sad, Scott?
Oh, yeah, I guess it helps if I turn my mute off.
Yeah.
So I'd gone to Haiti to do relief work after the 2010 earthquake. We got there about a week after the earthquake. There were still major aftershocks going on. There was a group of paramedics, doctors, and staff from the charity that was based here and down in Haiti. So we went just to do medical relief work. We got there. The airport was being run by U.S. Air Force guys standing next to the runway because the building hadn't collapsed, but it was full of cracks, and there was no, no one died in the building, but no one wanted to die in an aftershock. There was still rubble in the streets. Getting around, sort of as Ian was saying earlier, was incredibly challenging. And the damage to the buildings varied from completely leveled to, barely a scratch. It was really quite fascinating. And so, as I mentioned earlier, you look at some of the buildings that were built by corporations that had money. Not that Port-au-Prince has a whole lot of industry, but these international companies that are in there. and they're built to the expected North American building codes standards, and they were all fine. And it was the poorest Haitians who were living in tent slums didn't really suffer for it, because if a tent collapses on you, you're okay. Their middle class really suffered because, it's just poor cinder block construction, very weak concrete and mortar, because it's all made with very salty sand and salt water. So as a consequence, just horrific crush injuries. The level of disruption to infrastructure. I mean, Ian, you'd sort of alluded to know where your water, gas, and electric shutoffs are.
Mm-hmm.
You look at all the fires in the San Francisco earthquake. Well, it's because you have all this movement. Your gas lines get sheared. You have gas leaks everywhere. Mm-hmm. So as much as I would love to think that my natural gas generator is going to keep me powered, the reality is, if I were running a gas company, I'd probably turn off the gas at that point.
At the major junction, yeah.
The big valve.
Yeah.
And then sort of figure out what you need to repair in the meantime. So the reality is, you're probably going to be without a lot of that infrastructure for quite a while.
Well, and not even like them deciding to turn off the main valve. It might just be a fail-safe where the power goes out, or there's a seismograph attached to it or whatever, and it would just be an automatic shut-off. And the fact, until they sort things out and figure out what's going on, and somebody actually turns it on for real, it just might be an automatic shut-off.
Yeah, and I mean, if I were designing it, that's the way I'd do it.
Yeah.
So, anyway, just absolutely fascinating when you look at the level of damage, the varying damage, where like some buildings, whether they're on a sand and you're seeing liquefaction and the whole thing tilts over, poor construction. So it gives you a lot of respect for building codes, like thinking about hurricane ties. Why do you need a hurricane tie? Because someone might lift up on your roof, or sort of always assuming that gravity is downward. Well, if you've got an earthquake, all of a sudden it might be sideways for a couple of seconds, or during a hurricane, the wind might be pulling up on your roof. So seeing the value in that was quite interesting.
Well, that was very interesting too. When the Haiti one happened, it was only 7, like you said, on the Richter scale. So imagine if it was like an 8 or a 9, that'd be crazy. Like, it'd be way more devastation. But they had the soil liquefaction happen, but of course they have so many shanty towns built on the muddy hillsides, that also led to some problems too, because they ended up sliding right down into other neighborhoods, and yeah.
Oh, I mean, it was just absolutely catastrophic. And we went down to help one of our paramedics who had taken a leave of absence to volunteer at running a medical clinic down there before all this happened. So we had some access to resources. That was sort of how we got involved in it. But in hearing his stories, being an intact medical clinic, after this happened, that they were just getting waves and waves of horribly injured people, well beyond the resources of any healthcare system, let alone that of a very poor country. We were talking about shelves earlier. Well, we got there a week later, and all of their shelves from their stockroom were still all toppled over. They didn't have time to sort of tidy up because they were just treating patients. So it's absolutely fascinating sort of seeing this stuff in practice, and whether that strong an earthquake applied to a Canadian city, you'd see as much damage. Hopefully not, but like you said, it's this logarithmic scale. So all of a sudden, an 8 or a 9 earthquake, and you are going to see that catastrophic damage to a fairly wide area.
Yeah.
Anyway, I could talk about it for hours, but you guys don't need to hear all that. Moral of the story is, this stuff happens.
Did you see, like, because there were a whole ton of aftershocks, right? And you said you were there while they were still happening. Were you seeing that the damage pattern was kind of following the same following the same direction each time, or were you seeing different? Was it shaking to the left one time and shaking to the right another time, or?
I'm one of those people that doesn't really feel it. Like,
Okay.
we were kind of sitting around one evening. We'd sort of been working at the hospital all day, and we were sitting around in the evening, and you sort of look at, there's a ceiling fan, and it's wobbling up and down, kind of funny. Like, oh, I guess that must be an aftershock. So I have no reference to know how where on the Richter scale that little aftershock was, but I wasn't quite as aware of it as some of the other people I was with that were just more attuned to it.
Yeah, a lot of times too, if you think about like your cell phone vibrating, it doesn't really have a direction per se, but it's the same idea, because depends if the plates are sliding, side to side, one's going under the other, but they're both like going up, or there could be all sorts of directions going to, but for the most part, it's just glorified cell phone vibrate and on steroids.
So, excellent example of a wide-scale disaster where we would be on our own for a fairly significant amount of time.
Yep, 100%.
And even if you're not affected, if your neighborhood is affected, or somewhere up the supply chain is affected, then right,
Yep.
even if Vancouver Island wasn't affected by an earthquake, but Vancouver is, all of a sudden you can't get equipment out onto the island. You could be isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, it's certainly something to keep in the back of your head. If you're not in an area that is prone to earthquakes, doesn't mean it can't happen as well. So something good to keep in your thoughts for planning. And
poking around that website from that Ian posted from like Seismic Canada or whatever it's called, and like there are significant five or higher earthquakes that cover most of eastern Canada. So it would be totally reasonable that ships, containers, trains, and trucks can't get through should something like that happen.
Yes, just all it takes is a crack on the road, right?
Yep.
Interestingly enough, too, like a lot of people down the States, like this doesn't really apply to us at all, but of course, people are always talking about the Yellowstone supervolcano and all these other ones, and the prepper porn fantasy ones. But the actual most likely earthquake to happen is nowhere near there or where we'd expect it on the West Coast. It's actually the New Madrid Fault in basically along the Mississippi Delta. And you think of how much infrastructure, gas supply lines, services go up and down the river, everything else. That'd be a pretty big deal if one happened there.
Yep.
I mean, and nobody talks about that one really, but
except us.
Except for us, but because
Yep.
we're paranoid. But that's okay. But we're also not American, so hey, there you go.
You're only
That's true.
paranoid until you're right.
That's a good point. Well, with that, shall we move into the podcast challenge?
Yes, and for the podcast challenge, this is a great reminder to check your bug out bag, your grab and go bag, your evacuation bag, your get home bag, whatever it is that you call it, wherever it is that it lives for you, have that ready to go. Earthquakes are one great reason, but there are a million others, and that should be able to sustain you until you can get somewhere else, and that should also be part of your plan.
It might just be an emergency latte kit for some of the Vancouver types, but at least it's something, right?
Yep, exactly.
The first rule of SAS survival is stop and make a tea.
That's right.
Yeah, at least you're caffeinated.
Formulate your plan, everything else. Yeah. I did put the BC government list in there. It's pretty like elementary, really. It's like almost like, I hate to say it, but prepping for retards. Did I say it out loud?
Oh,
But anyways,
Jesus. Oh, it was great knowing everybody on YouTube. That's gotta get us booted.
Prepping for special needs preppers. How's that sound?
I
Slow,
think that's not
smooth,
right
smooth,
either.
fast,
Yeah.
right? Keep it
Yeah.
simple.
Okay,
One of the
so-
four laws of combat.
What I'm saying, a basic list is available on the internet. If
There
I'm
we go.
putting myself up there. But yeah, I'm working on it from there.
What a good starting point. It's a good starting point.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Alan.
it gives
Thank you
somewhere
for
to
saving me.
begin. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to upcoming events.
So the Mapleseed events are still sort of going. There's a link in the show notes there. Last time I checked, there were quite a few that were either canceled or full. but may end up being canceled depending on where they are and what's going to happen with the government lockdown, not lockdown, go outside, can't go outside, just make up their mind, whatever they want to do, and pick a lane and stay in it. And I'll stop there.
Well, actually, I'm not laughing at you guys. We're probably on a week behind you, but they just extended the thing in Ontario, didn't they?
They did, yep.
Yeah, till the 7th of June, I believe, Eric?
Something like that, yeah, 6th or 7th, yeah.
Yeah.
So because I know a lot of Mapleseed events were planned before then. I think they've had to cancel a bunch already because of the Ontario extension. So,
yeah,
I suspect it'll be extended again after that, but we will see. So Canwarn is coming up May the 26th, 7 p.m. Eastern. RAC is doing the Canwarn course. So if you want to learn about weather and clouds and tornadoes and all that kind of fun stuff, check it out.
Right on. Lots of notice. No excuse for not being ready for BC people in time. You have 5 months notice for the Great BC Shakeout. I do believe it's October 21st at 10:21. So 10:21 of 10:21. And there's a link in there as well to how to participate in the Great BC Shakeout. And basically what it is earthquake preparedness, awareness, and kind of practice drills, I guess, kind of under the guise of testing your gear. Maybe it's worth thinking about.
Wait a minute. Are we supposed to test our gear?
Yeah, once in a while.
Oh.
Once again, brand new information. This show is full of it tonight.
117 episodes in. I don't think we've ever mentioned test your gear.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's really kind of more of a commentary thing here too, but like based on the pipeline, infrastructure, everything else going on with their manufacturing issues, supply issues with the lumber and everything else. There's a big talk of like rice, the crops failing in the States this year from like problems from last year and this year. Yeah, so who knows? Let's talk about like commodity shortages coming to a theater near you. Probably be talking about more and more as time goes on here, depending on the growing season.
Cool.
Yeah. That's what it.
All right. Deal of the week.
Found a good one. Everybody can afford this for their grab and go bag or bug out bag, whatever. The Cabelas Folding knife, which is a inexpensive knife. I won't say cheap, but good value for the money. Right now they're on sale for $5.99. And they're only about like the blades maybe like 2-3 inches long, whatever, but they're handy. They're actually a good blade. I've got a couple of them, and they're so cheap you can put one everywhere. Like put one in every vehicle, every backpack, whatever.
But are they like real inches or internet inches?
Well, how many we'll call 6 internet inches, 3 real ones. But yeah, so the link is in the show notes. But yeah, they're a good little knife. I really enjoy them. Actually, they're pretty handy to have. And I actually had tried to get another person to come on here and talk about their 3-day grab and go bag, but they decided to jam on me, so I will get rid of that one.
Yeah,
that's it.
Cool. We'll move in the shout outs. So anybody?
Nope.
Okay, so I've got a quick one here for E. Matson. Just mentioned in the live chat, it's their first time tonight getting into the live chat. So welcome to the show. Glad you could get here.
I want to shout out the team I went to Haiti with. I mean, granted, it was 11 years ago, but they're just some absolutely fantastic people, and it was very much a life-changing experience. So I owe that gang a big thanks.
Awesome. Yeah. All right, we will move into iTunes and email. So iTunes reviews and email. I'm reading it backwards here, but all right. So we got an email from Joe, and it just says, hello, fellow preppers. Thanks for the great show. It's quite relevant to Australia, so we're making it a fair distance. Would the hosts be able to share their thoughts about help taking a year to arrive? The book seemed realistic. However, it seems to me that aid from other countries would arrive in a few months or so. Perhaps I've misunderstood. You give me plenty of encouragement to be more prepared. And regards, Joe.
Interesting. Yeah, he had, I guess in the subject line of that email, he had phrased it under the guise of like 1 second after, kind of, I guess, in relation to that. Yeah. As a matter of fact, that actually might make a good podcast episode. If you
so, yeah.
If you had to wait a year for help to arrive, what would you do, or how would you make the things work?
I'd buy multiple 72-hour kits.
Toilet paper.
Drink a lot.
Yeah. I'd refer to the making alcohol episode.
Yeah. Exactly. No, actually, we might get back to that. We'll talk about that post show for sure.
I think that's actually a good, whole show topic for sure. Not just a quick answer here in this section. So, thanks for the topic idea, Joe. I'll be coming
now.
Out
Aid from other countries would arrive in a few months or so. Discuss that real quick if there's time. I know we were running a little long, but we're already late, so we can't be more late.
Technically, I know set a limit on the time.
There are lots and lots of countries that have quick response teams. So the Canadian military is one of them. They can deploy anywhere in the world in 72 hours. They have literally like packs that like crates that are ready to launch onto a plane and go anywhere in the world. You'd be looking at a month or a week, not a month.
But by the same token, though, that's for like short-term emergencies in localized areas. If you had a whole like all of North America and you had to feed all of North America for months on end,
yes,
that's a whole different kettle of fish, right? So
entirely different problem.
Or say the planes don't work now.
Yeah, I guess.
Or the airport runway's been damaged in the earthquake and it's busted up and you can't land.
Yeah, no, that's totally reasonable. I'm saying it's more like a week than months.
Like long-term sustained aid for a large group of people is nobody's prepared for that. But short-term with small groups, absolutely, yeah. Like the United States always has a carrier on scene with every major disaster, it seems. So it's like, and they have enough goodies on board to keep people going. So, anyways,
there we go.
Cool. Well, stay tuned for that show topic because it's going to be a good one.
Cool.
But with that, I will bring episode 117 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or of course your favorite podcast app. Please help us out. Take a minute, submit a review. It does help other people find us, as long as it's not a 1-star. I figured I'd rant on 1 stars here. I haven't done it in a while.
That's true.
It's been like 50 episodes since you've done that. We do record these shows live on Facebook and YouTube. If you want an early peek at the disaster that this is before it gets all polished, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast, and click the notifications tab. It gives you an alert when we're going live. You can find me, Alan, at prepperpodcast.ca. That's with 1 L. I suppose you could also like and follow our Facebook page, but I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. So do that or don't or whatever.
I hear it's still there, kind of.
I don't know who's on it or who's doing anything with it, but
if you manage our Facebook page on our behalf, could you let us know? We'd like to do a quick shout out.
I think it's on autopilot.
Pretty much.
All right, Jeff, where can everybody get a hold of you?
Just generically at feedback at prepperpodcast.ca. Somebody else on this panel happens to know where I live, so I'm kind of stuck there. So,
hey.
Pass along any emails for me at the same feedback at prepperpodcast.ca.
Right on. You can reach me directly by emailing me at theislandretreat@gmail.com and on both Gab and Odyssey at the Island Retreat. You can also find my Canadian Patriot Podcast on iTunes and YouTube. You can also find... Oh, wait a minute. Did I repeat myself? No, I didn't. Okay, here we go. You can also find me on Canadian Patriot Podcast on iTunes, YouTube, and in the Discord group, Canadian Patriot Podcast. Email us if you want to invite to the Discord group. There you can find us discussing why government and waste in society makes me hide under tables on all fours.
It's a new media. Yet another new social media outlet.
Yeah, man. The images are just... I got to drink more tonight. Please check me out at rapidsurvival.com. You can get me there on the live chats. I'm not reading the part about OnlyFans. Come on. Really? No. That wasn't working out. I got rid of that last week. Yeah. So you can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, stay safe, be prepared, all that good stuff.
And keep learning.